続きましてはですね、OPC UA アップデートになります。こちら英語のセッションになりますので、すみません、今日はちょっと通訳がいませんのでよろしくお願いいたします。OPC Foundation President の、トーマス・バークの方から、お話ししていただきます。
Good afternoon. Thank you. I apologize. I don't speak any Japanese. I can say kampai when we have later on, but that's okay. It's a great pleasure to be here to talk about the OPC Foundation and specifically all the activities that are going here in Japan. OPC Japan today will celebrate their 20-year anniversary. We're going to celebrate that. And it's been a long time coming, and it's a very good, strong organization adopting the technology, and really the commitment to open standards really resonates out of Japan very significantly. I started OPC in 1995, so it's been a long time. I've been doing this quite a while, and I know some of my friends here, we knew each other. It's over 20 years now that we've met and worked together. And I might have to, I can do it that way. Okay. This clicker. Ah, it has a point, okay. We need standardization on these. The foundation and our vision of interoperability really goes very international. It's all about secure, as my colleague just said earlier, what OPC UA is and what we're doing. It's about security and reliability. It's about information, integration, interoperability. And it's about truly being open. Our specifications are available to anyone. They are international standards. They're IEC. The technology is all available as open source. And even our certification program is now available to non-members as well, because we're preaching all about information integration and interoperability as the fundamental thing. Our membership has grown very significantly. We have a very active board of directors that really drives the technology. I'm proud to say, companies like Microsoft and SAP in the IT world are now, integral parts of our board of directors, in addition to everyone involved in industrial automation overall. This is just a sample of some of the significant members that are of the foundation that are known as the highest tier or Class A members. So over a period of time, we've had a very significant growth in that. In addition to that, we're seeing a lot of companies that are end users that are now becoming members and really driving the technology and the importance of the technology across all the industries. And it all has to do because of our interoperability. Our organization actually mirrors a lot of the great organization that's here in Japan. We have a board of directors, we have a technical control board, a marketing control board, and essentially we had to put a strong process in place, because the key thing of OPC now, and I was meeting with the gentleman early from Mete, we're talking about collaboration. We're talking about collaboration across organizations, and one of the big things that OPC UA provides is a mechanism to allow information from other organizations to be modeled, and then OPC UA becomes the solution and the infrastructure for communicating and providing that information across disparate applications and devices. So we've put quite a complex structure in place to be able to do that. I always talk about secure and reliable. In the world of IoT, that's the new hot button that everyone's talking about. IoT is not that complicated. We've been doing it for a long time. But OPC UA is providing the mechanism to allow all these different IoT protocols to work together. So you learned from our colleague what we're doing with Publish Subscribe. We support AMQP, we support MQTT, we support TCP and HTTP, and now we're working on what's known as TSN, the time-sensitive network. So as the technology continues to evolve, it's very similar to what we did with the field buses. The early days of OPC, we provided a mechanism that essentially standardized all the field buses and allowed client applications to be able to talk to all these different devices independent of the field bus. Now we're doing the same thing in the IoT world, giving us total vendor independence and, more importantly, platform, protocol, and operating system independence, and that's the fundamental part of OPC UA. I prefer to talk about our solution as we are the ecosystem for industrial interoperability. The analysts tell me right now we've got a little over 35,000 products that are in the marketplace and about 47 million installations. They're estimating by the end of next year, because of IoT and what OPC UA is for the infrastructure of IIoT, that we'll have over 6,000 different companies that will be building OPC products from an international perspective. There's 120 million OPC installations that are forecasted to exist by the end of 2018. I like to talk about this initiative called Industry 4.0, and one of the first things I go look at is there's so many of these initiatives that look like Industry 4.0, and you can see we have similar things across all international boundaries. You know, I was just in France in October. They have the Industry the Future. You know, China has Made in China 2025, right? The North America has the Internet, the Industrial Internet Consortium, and obviously we have Industry 4.0. And we're doing the same things. We're going to work essentially with the Robot Revolution Initiative out of Japan as part of the key thing. So these are all the things where OPC UA becomes the infrastructure in the world. We have been selected by Industry 4.0 as basically the communication and information solution for Industry 4.0. So anyone that wants to build an Industry 4.0 product now has to use OPC UA for communication and information. I was just in China in September, and the same thing is going on. Made in China 2025, they've adopted OPC UA as their infrastructure of choice. We're talking about working right now with the IVI, and we're going to do the same thing there. And we're doing the same thing in Korea across these different initiatives. So the important thing to remember is we're talking about interoperability way beyond where we ever thought we were going before. This allows the movement of data and information in a secure fashion, as my colleague talked about, from the sensors all the way into the cloud. There's a lot of things going on in Industry 4.0 and in the Industrial Internet Consortium. If you know anything about the Industrial Internet Consortium, they actually work with a lot of different suppliers to develop what's known as test beds. So there's a very active thing going on in smart manufacturing in the Industrial Internet Consortium. They've selected OPC UA as the solution for that. The things that we're doing with TSN and the smart factory. And there's another 16 different initiatives essentially that the IIC is recommending. Obviously, I mentioned again about Industry 4.0. You know, if you were to look at the Industry 4.0, the documents that are being published by ZVI and things like that, they talk about different levels of compatibility for Industry 4.0, and essentially even to meet the basic Industry 4.0, it actually requires OPC UA. So if you want to do basic or ready or full, you have to do OPC UA and leverage both the services and conditions and the communications of OPC UA to build products as part of their architecture. It took a long time to get there, but they recognize the value of platform independence and vendor neutrality. So if you look at the documents that are being published and how it works with Industry 4.0, I won't go in a lot of detail other than it's information now. It's not just data anymore. It's about communication of information and understanding the information in terms of what's known as the syntax and semantics of the data. You want to have interoperability. So when we talk together, you know, you're understanding me in English, but if I start speaking in Hungarian, you'd look at me and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. But the concept is, with an information modeling architecture of OPC UA, we provide all the ability to understand the context and understand the data, which are the key things inside of Industry 4.0 and what they're trying to do. I mentioned about China and the things that we're doing there. Earlier this year, we opened up a new lab in China, and essentially the government really is pushing, and they standardized, and they came in and said that their official speech from this mayor of a city called Ningbo, he said, OPC UA, I don't know if he understood what I was talking about, but he said OPC UA is critical for factory automation for our whole concept of Made in China 2025. The Chinese people made it a Chinese national standard deliberately, and we've opened up a lab in China accordingly, and they're very excited about the pushing forward of what they're doing. The MMI, which is in Korea, very similar thing. They're using OPC UA as their key strategy for both operational technology and IT. So they wanted to leverage exactly what we're doing with Microsoft and AWS and Oracle, essentially to push data into the cloud. This is my colleague that we met with earlier, and I don't know if you know who he is, but we met with him earlier, and he talked about specifically what he wanted to do and what he thought about OPC UA. And we published this in our brochure from IVI that talks about their commitment and how they wanted to support OPC UA as part of this architecture. Collaboration is the key. You can go out and see the demo there on the hallway, and it's all about collaboration with a lot of different organizations. So we do industrial automation, we do building automation, we do things related to both process and discrete, and it's a whole volume of different organizations we partnered with. One of the keys that we partnered with now is VDMA, and VDMA is made up of a little over 3,200 different members, and essentially they have 100 different what I call specifications for different areas of the industry. We're actively working, for example, with the machine tools, machine vision, robotics, essentially, and all the things related to food processing and assembly. And there will be OPC UA, what's known as companion specifications, that take the OPC UA information model and allow them to model these initiatives and essentially have that ability to have communication and discovery of this stuff using the OPC UA services. So this is an active going on, and they're joint working groups between VDMA and corresponding. The Industry 4.0, again, you know, they're talking about the different models that are very important to it. So as we collaborate with other organizations, these other organizations then get recognized by Industry 4.0 as part of the key. And the VDMA guys, they've put together a very good brochure, basically. It's about 60 pages. It's in German and English, and I've been told it's going to be translated into other languages as well. But they did this as, this is the architecture for Industry 4.0, and specifically they talk about the guidelines of how you do this with OPC UA. So they did a better job than I think I could have done talking about the OPC UA technology to their members. Again, the VDMA is doing the same thing. They're pushing a lot of things out, specifically in the area of everything related to manufacturing. They want to have intelligent manufacturing, they want to have smart factories, and they're leveraging OPC UA deliberately and publishing that accordingly. My colleague talked about the BSI and the things that we're doing there. Obviously, we've been recognized by a number of different security organizations internationally, and our goal is to basically have security as a very fundamental infrastructure of OPC UA. This is very significant because as you start thinking about IoT and how you bridge the gap and how you have these different devices working together, you want to make sure they're secure. You want to make sure that you have the different levels of access and you decide if you should talk to him and what you should share. And that's a key part of our infrastructure that we provided. So we've actually provided a complete guideline and document that talks about how our suppliers should use OPC UA. We've had, dialogue from a number of our key suppliers. Microsoft, for example, they got up and they stood and talked about their commitment and what they thought OPC UA did for their connectivity from an IoT perspective to Azure. So that just got released earlier this year, and essentially we've been building walls. And there have been, I think there's a wall here at the Microsoft facility here in Japan, and it shows these IoT and edge devices and gateways that are OPC UA enabled and how they're being used as the connection to Azure. So we talk a lot about that capability. And And the Microsoft guys and ourselves, there's a listing of some of the vendors that put this together. We built 40 of these walls, and essentially, again, they're going all over the world, evangelizing Microsoft's commitment in industrial IoT and showing how all these different embedded devices actually can provide, data and information deliberately to Azure. So there's been a lot of press releases that have been publishing, and we're very happy with all the activities in Japan and what's going on. There's a blue brochure that was out on the table out there. It's been translated. I think it is already translated into Japanese, or it's under translation now. But essentially, this is all the testimonials. It talks about OPC UA, and it talks about all the different collaborations of what we're doing and how you can become involved and engaged with the technology. Now I'll slow down. Okay. One of the key technologies that OPC UA is actively working on is something called TSN. It stands for Time Sensitive Network. This is what I call a game-changing technology. This allows us to do things that we never were able to do before. We'll now be able to go beyond supervisory control, and we're starting to look at opportunities for real-time control between machines, between controllers. Very important if you start thinking about automotive, you start thinking about packaging, you start thinking about the whole discrete industry. Also, if you start thinking about the process industry. So what we're talking about is we're pushing out the message, again, with Industry 4.0, but more importantly, beyond just Industry 4.0, the TSN technology with OPC UA provides a mechanism to give us high-speed commercial Ethernet, deterministic, reliable performance between controllers, between machines, okay? We've got a lot of different vendors that are, very supportive of this and really driving the technology. And we did a press release and a press conference at the SPS show in Germany this year, and literally it was standing room only for the number of people that were there. And essentially, it's all about providing a mechanism to do real-time control now between machines. Ultimately, OPC UA over TSN will start expanding into other markets as well. The building automation community is very interested in what we're doing here as well. And we've had a lot of good dialogue with BACnet and also into the home automation market as well. So our mechanism right now is we're talking about this from a controller to controller. Obviously, we're also going to support, TSN and 5G networks, right? And we're going to continue to add more networking technology, and allows this OPC UA, as my colleague talked about. Guess what? OPC UA protects your investment. As the technology changes, you can continue to be able to get this technology as part of the base architecture of OPC UA. So this is an exciting thing of what we're doing. There's an organization called LNI. This is a partial list of the companies that are actively engaged in this right now. And TSN is an IEEE 802 standard. And essentially, these are the list of companies that are saying, you know what, we're going to do OPC UA over TSN. We want this as an integral part of our architecture, specifically to enable the whole communication of control to control. And also they're leveraging, the ability, they can do controller to controller and machine to machine. They also have the ability with OPC UA to go to the cloud. So they're looking at this as a whole communication and information architecture accordingly. So different companies, for example, a company like T-Mobile, what do they have to do with what we do? They're a totally different company, but these are the kind of companies, Cisco and T-Mobile and many of these other companies that are now becoming very active in our space, and they believe in leveraging the interoperability standard of OPC UA. The next big part of OPC is all about certification. As with all technology, we publish specifications, we make technology available, but we also want to make sure that the suppliers produce the best products that actually meet and exceed the standards of OPC. So currently we've got compliance tools that support all the existing OPC UA releases at 103. We will have one ready for 1.04. and we're also doing a lot of things with the companion specification. So not only do we certify OPC UA, we actually certify OPC UA for these other organizations. So we'll actually certify OPC UA with all these VDMA standards, for example, for robotics and machine tools as part of the key architecture. So that's kind of an exciting thing that we're doing. And what we're seeing is a lot of demand for certification. So, you know, we've got a lab in North America, we have a lab in Europe, we have a lab in China. We're talking about opening up a lab here in Japan. We're going to open up a lab in Korea. We'll probably open up multiple labs in other locations as well. Because what's happening is we're getting a lot of the end users that are saying, you know, we want products that work. We want to use the OPC UA technology. They're forcing the suppliers to make sure that they're developing best-of-breed products. So we're seeing a pretty significant growth there, and I'm already working with our colleagues here in Japan to talk about structuring and putting a lab in place in the Japanese marketplace. So hopefully I got us closer to back on time. I wanted just to bring up a lot of things we're doing. Normally I get up here and I talk, as my colleague will say, he'll get up there for 2 hours. We got to stop him. And sometimes I go fast about that. But I want to attest to the great work that's going on here in Japan. It's always a pleasure for me to come to Tokyo and other places inside of Japan because of the great commitment of the Japanese marketplace to open standards and truly breathing and really driving interoperability. Okay? Thank you.